is Nadine from DIY Sweets. Today I'm going to show you how to make pie. A lot of people are really afraid to make pie because they think that the crust is really hard to make. So I'm going to show you today just how easy it can be, and you're going to get a delicious flaky crust, and you won't have to buy those ones at the store that are pre-made that really aren't that great tasting. To start out with, what we're going to do is we're going to dump the flour into our bowl. After we've dumped the flour in this bowl I have some sugar, salt, baking powder, and powdered milk. And I'm going to dump that in there too. And then I'm just going to just kind of mix it in well so that all of the ingredients are mixed together. Now, if you don't have a pastry bread, you can use a fork or you can use a couple of knives. Either way it's going to work. These really, though, you can buy it at any grocery store and they only cost a few dollars. I would recommend getting this, but if not, you can use the other. Now, once I've got the flour in there, I'm going to put all of my fats in there. And this recipe, it calls for lard, shortening, and butter. This is kind of the secret that makes this a really good recipe. Most recipes only call for shortening. So this is a little bit different than any pie crust recipes you've made before. But it really is going to make the difference. Now once I have those in, I'm just going to keep pushing down and breaking up the fats and mixing it with the dry ingredients. In the end, we want this to kind of look like a meal. We want it to be like clumps of flour and shortening together and not any of the really powdery flour. The important thing to remember about pie crust is that if you overwork it, especially once you add the liquid to it, it's going to be tough. At this point, while you're just mixing this in, make sure it's mixed in really good. Because when you get to adding the water to it, you really only want to work it enough to get it to stick together. Once it's holding together, you don't want to work it anymore or you're going to have a tough pie crust. And that's really the secret to making a pie. As you look at this, you can see that it's not really powdery. It kind of looks like a dough that's not quite sticking together. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take the half a cup of water and dump it in here and then mix it. And with this, I may find that I need more water. If I do, I've got some extra water here that I can put in just a little bit at a time, but I want to work this half a cup first. So I'm just going to dump it in there and then work this just a little bit, start it getting together. Once I've got the water somewhat worked in, and you see it's really sticking together, I am going to just take the pastry blender out, and I'm just, with my hand, going to mix in the rest of that flour. Now I'm not trying to get a big kneading and work up the gluten in the flour. I'm just trying to mix the remaining flour into the stuff. Because I am making this pie for a lot of people, I actually did a double recipe so that I could just do the pie crust once and get 2 pies out of it. So that's really all I want to work it. I don't want to work it any more than that. I'm going to roll my pie out on this mat because it's going to help it not stick. I do want to still put some flour on here, and I want to put some flour on my rolling pin. Then I'm just going to put my dough right there, and you'll notice as I roll it, I am not pushing really hard. I'm just trying to get it to be round shape, and I want this to go all the way to the edge, because if I don't take this all the way to the edge on that part, it's not going to be big enough for my pie tin. Now you don't have to use a mat. You can use just your counter and just put a lot of flour on it. The reason I prefer to use the mat is then I can just lift it up like this and put it on the pie tin, in the pie tin. If I don't have a mat, then I have to roll it here and hope it doesn't stick. But since I have a mat, I just am able to put it on in the pie tin. And sometimes it's easier to stick that pie tin right on the thing and then turn it over and then peel your mat off. Now pie dough is very forgiving because you're not going to see most of it. Most of it is going to be down in the pie. So if it tears like it is right there, I can just go like this and mold it back together. Now I want to push it down to make sure it is totally filling the pie shell. Now as I'm doing this, I can feel air bubbles, but that's going to be really easy to fix. I'm just going to take a fork and poke holes in it, which you want anyway because then it cooks laying flat. So let me get my fork. So I have my fork here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go along the bottom and poke holes. And that's going to provide air for this. Now I did not spray this pan down because pie crust has so much fat in it anyway, it's not going to stick. And then I also go around the side and poke holes. And this helps to make sure that it's laying down flat. After I do that, I just kind of double check, make sure it's all down flat. And then, if you notice, pies have a really fancy edge a lot of time around it. This is a really quick, simple, and still looks really nice edge that I do on my pies. I just, right here at the end, I just push the fork in like this. And I want to make sure it's kind of slanting down because the pie crust might shrink a little bit when you cook it. And so making sure it goes a little bit over the edge of the pie is going to help it so it doesn't shrink. Now, if you're going to cook it with the filling, like I'm going to with these pies, it's not going to shrink as much anyway. But sometimes you have to cook the pie crust and then put a filling in it because the filling really doesn't get cooked, or the filling only gets cooked for a couple of minutes. But with the ones I'm making today, the filling's going to be in there the whole time the pie crust is cooking. So it's not as crucial, but I still like it. You see, it's still going over the edge. You cannot see the pie plate at all. It is going over the edge. And I am just using that fork again to break off the excess pie crust. As I said, I made a double batch so that I could do 2 pies. After I get the other one covered, I will come back and show you how to make the fillings for the pies. We're now going to make the filling for the apple crumb pie. To do this, we're going to have to peel 6 cups of apples, but we're going to coat those apples with lemon juice, lemon peel, sugar, and flour. First, I want to make my lemon zest. Now, there's several ways you can get the lemon zest. You can use a grater and use the finest grate and just grate it there. Or you can use a zester, and with this, you would just take the lemon, go like this, and get some off. All those take a little bit of time. I actually have this little gadget that I found. It's like a miniature grater, and all of the lemon peel goes into this container so that when I'm done, I don't need another container that I have to clean. So all I do is I use this, and I just go like this and grate the lemon into here. And if you look carefully, you can see that there's some lemon peel going in there. Now I'm going to need 1 teaspoon of this lemon. I'm just going to keep doing this until I get about a teaspoon of the lemon peel in there. So I'll come back and show you what we do after we get the lemon peel in there. So I have most of the outer lemon peel off of this lemon, and as I look in there, it looks like I've got quite a bit. I only need a teaspoon, which isn't that much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out my teaspoon and see if I have a teaspoon. And I'm just going to add it to this bowl that has my 2 tablespoons of flour in it. Oh, I've got much more than I need. So I just want to fill this up. So that's really all I need because that is 1 teaspoon. I'm just going to mix it with that. It also calls for 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. And I have an electric citrus juicer because I just find it's a lot easier. So all I'm going to do is take my lemon and I'm just going to juice it on this juicer. If you don't have an electric juicer, you can use a manual one, or you can even buy lemon juice. But I just think it tastes so much better when it's made with fresh lemon juice. I just take the lemon and I just put it on there, and it does all the work. I only need 3 tablespoons, so 1 lemon might be enough. It might take a second lemon because you never know. Some lemons you can just get a lot more juice out of than other lemons. But I'm going to see how this 1 lemon does and see if I get 3 tablespoons with this 1 lemon. So I'm just going to take my measuring spoon and I want to see if I've got 3 tablespoons. If not, I can do the other lemon. Oh, and I want this in a separate bowl. So there's 1, 2, 3. So I was able to get basically 3 tablespoons out of that lemon. So I have my flour, I have my sugar, I have my lemon peel, and I have my lemon juice. The next thing I need to do is get 6 cups of apples. Now I don't have to be totally right exact on the apples. Basically I want enough apples to fill the pie crust. So I'm going to get the apples, I'm going to get the cutting board, and I'm going to show you how I cut the apples to go into the pie crust. I have this bowl to put the apples in as I cut them up. It's got markings in here. So the 6 cut marking is right there, and as I said, this doesn't have to be really exact, so it kind of gives me a guideline, and when I see it's basically to the 6 cut marking, then I will stop putting the apples. The apples go in that bowl, and I like to use Granny Smith apples. Fuji apples work really good too. So basically what I do is I take this apple, and I have this apple corer, and I just push down on the apple until it goes all the way through. And then I'm going to peel it after I've done that. I like to core it before I peel it. You can do it the other way. If you'd rather peel it and then core it, that's fine. I just prefer to core it and then peel it. I'm going to take these apples. I'm going to use a paring knife. And I always look at this and see, is there any of that I don't really like that didn't come up with the core? If so, I cut that out. And then I just take this paring knife and I start on one side and I go down. And then I come around and I do the other side. And that usually gets it all off. We want thin slices. So while I have that, I'm now going to take this knife and I'm going to slice these really thin. So even though that cut them into slices, which is great for when you're just eating apples, I actually want it thinner than that in the pie. I just continue doing this till I have 6 cups. Usually that is close to 6 apples. Sometimes, a lot depends on the size. Sometimes you might not need quite 6 apples. Sometimes you might need 7. But usually it's going to be fairly close to 6 apples. So I'm going to keep cutting and slicing these. And when I have my 6 cups, I'll come back and show you how we mix the other stuff in. I have peeled all of the apples and cut them now. So I'm just going to sprinkle the flour and the lemon peel, sprinkle the sugar, and then pour that lemon juice over it. Then I'm just going to stir it up. Mix it all up. And this doesn't really look like much of a sauce right now, but as it cooks in the oven, and it's going to turn into this nice, delicious sauce or syrup for the pie film. Now that it's all mixed, I'm just going to take the pie shell and I'm going to put all of this into the pie shell. This is called an apple crumb pie. So once I have this into the pie shell, I'm going to make a crumb mixture that I sprinkle on top. That will be the top part of the pie. So let's show you how to make the crumb mixture now. To make the topping for the pie, all we're going to do is dump in some flour, some sugar, and then these are our spices that we're going to use. So we're just going to dump those in, kind of mix them up a little bit. And then we're going to put in the butter. And we're going to use our pastry blender to break apart the butter and to have it go into all of these other ingredients. And we want this to be kind of a bunch of little crumbs that's a mixture of butter and the other ingredients. And then we will sprinkle it onto the pie and it'll be ready to bake. So I find usually in the beginning, especially if the butter's a little hard, that you might have to cross cut it, but you do want to make sure the butter gets cut in. And if it sticks to the pastry blender, like it was in the beginning, then you just take it off. And then just keep working it. Now we may not get all of the flour and sugar and spices mixed up with the butter. There might be some that's still really fine, and that's okay because we're going to sprinkle it on top of the pie. And then we're going to bake the pie, and the juices from the pie will mix with it, and we'll make it kind of a solid crust on top when we're done. So that's pretty well blended in. That's what we're looking for. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring my pie shell over here. And I'm just going to sprinkle this out. And I'm going to actually start kind of on the outside edges because I do want to make sure I get this on the outside. And if for some reason your pie shell is bigger than this amount, you can always make a little bit more up, but you don't really need it that thick. I do like to make it a deep dish pie plate that I do it because I do like to have more apples in it, but I don't really need the topping that much thick. So I'm just spreading it around, looking to see where it might be a little bit thin. I want to make sure all the apples are covered and that it pretty much goes to the edge in all the places. So I have this totally covered with the crumb coat. Now I'm just going to tear off fairly thin strips of aluminum foil. And I kind of want to protect this crust while it's cooking at the higher temperature. So I just wrap it around, and it usually takes about 3 pieces of the foil because of how big around this pie is. And I'm just going to kind of protect the outer crust while it cooks at the higher temperature. And you might have to move this a little bit. You find you didn't quite have it. Okay. So now I'm going to stick this in the oven at 375 degrees, and it's going to cook for 30 minutes. At that point, I'm going to take the foil off and bake it for an additional 30 minutes. Don't have to change the temperature on this one, but I want the first 30 minutes, I want the foil on. And then the second 30 minutes, I will take the foil off. Our apple pie has now cooled, and this is what it looks like once it's cooled. It's got that delicious crumble topping on top of a yummy apple pie. Again, this is Nadine with DIY Sweets. Enjoy.